waiting for Friday and maybe a new deal between Ottawa and Alberta. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Navigating the issues that matter to you. It's Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
If it's supposed to be a secret, the cat seems to be out of the bag. Multiple news outlets are reporting that Prime Minister Mark Carney will be in Alberta on Friday, just before the May-long weekend, to announce an agreement on the industrial carbon price with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. That's a key commitment Ottawa has been seeking in order to advance a pipeline project from Alberta to somewhere along the coast of British Columbia. Today's Globe and Mail says the Prime Minister will be presenting a plan to his cabinet in Ottawa today, and that he is tentatively scheduled to be in Alberta on Friday to make an announcement. That would come exactly 1 week after Premier Smith met the Prime Minister in Ottawa. On Monday, Premier Smith said she and the Prime Minister share a sense of urgency.
When you look at polling results, you have industry expressing some frustration that there's a carbon tax at all when there isn't in other jurisdictions. So we're losing industry support for the grand bargain that we put together. You're looking at polling as well of Albertans now. I think only 37% think that a pipeline to the coast will be built. And so at the same time as we're looking at the United States and the U.S. government, the U.S. president has issued numerous presidential permits to be able to build the expansion on Enbridge's pipeline, as well as the South Bow Bridger project, which uses the old Keystone assets. So there is sort of a, why can the American move faster to get Alberta oil to market than the Canadian government? That's a legitimate question to be asked. And so I think the Prime Minister wants to be able to quell any uncertainty about how committed his government is to those major projects, which is why when we met, I think we both landed on the need for shared urgency on this. So just a few more details and getting the wording going back and forth. And as soon as we have landed on a document we can sign, we'll let you know.
Columnist Rick Bell in the Calgary Sun says it sounds like it's all but a done deal, that an agreement between Ottawa and Alberta will be announced this Friday. If there is such a meeting on Friday, one of the backdrops will be the Alberta separatist movement, and questions will be asked if this is an attempt to try and dampen any enthusiasm for Alberta's separation. Premier Smith likened what's happening right now between Ottawa and Alberta to couples counseling.
I was warning the federal government that they were taking actions in a way that was offside with our Constitution, and that it was creating distrust, and it was creating an environment in Alberta where people had lost hope that Canada can work. So I've been the first on board saying we needed to address it. Addressing the legitimate grievances that Albertans have doesn't mean saying, I guess this is just how Canada works and we have to suck it up. Like, that is not an appropriate answer. The appropriate answer is, in a cooperative federalist environment where we have exclusive areas of jurisdiction and the federal government has exclusive areas of jurisdiction and they overlap, it's finding ways that accommodate both of them. That is what it's supposed to be. That's not how it's worked in the last 10 years. That's why people have lost hope. So my view is it's not to say we have to accept the liberal government vision of how the country is supposed to work, which doesn't work for us in most other provinces either. And it's time for a divorce. As I told the Prime Minister, it's more like couples counseling. Let's get together at a table, let's identify the issues that are problematic, and let's work them out.
Ottawa and Alberta have been in couples counseling since the MOU was first signed back in November of last year, with the major hurdle being increases to the industrial carbon tax. In Alberta, that carbon tax is $95 a ton. Under a new agreement, it could increase to $130 a ton by the year 2040. Speaking of the Global Progress Action Summit in Toronto this past weekend, Prime Minister Carney said it remains his government's goal to build sustainably.
We're focused on building sustainably because reducing emissions is not just a moral duty, it's an economic imperative. So that means those low-carbon homes, low-carbon trade corridors, low-carbon manufacturing, zero-carbon energy.
But a deal for a new pipeline will not sit well with some MPs in the Liberal caucus in Ottawa, who already think this Prime Minister is backsliding on his climate credentials. Stephen Guilbeault quit the Carney cabinet over disagreements on climate policy. and recently said that Mr. Carney's environmental policies are worse than Stephen Harper's. At the recent convention for the Liberal Party in Montreal, Mr. Guilbeault said Canada needs to course correct.
We were walking back on some key elements of our climate change plan, which would make it, if we continue in that direction, it will make it impossible for Canada to reach our international commitments by 2030 or by 2035, or even reach carbon neutrality by 2050. So I certainly hear the voices of those people who say that we are not as strong on climate change as we used to be. And I remained a member of the Liberal caucus. I'm still a member of the party because I want to continue as an MP, as a militant with the party, to try and push for us to redirect a little bit, to course correct on this issue. It is an existential crisis. We are paying the price of climate change every year in Canada. According to the Insurance Bureau of Canada, the annual cost of natural catastrophes went for about $300 million on average per year in the early 2000s to $6 billion in 2025. And we're all paying for that.
While political watchers in Ottawa wait to see what happens on Friday somewhere in Alberta, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has spent much of the spring pressing the Liberals to do something on a pipeline, most recently accusing the Prime Minister of wasting an entire year.
He said he was going to approve projects at speeds not seen in generations. He's been Prime Minister for a year, and he still hasn't even made up his mind whether he supports a pipeline. You know, there's no permit, there's no route, there's no start date, no completion date, no starting point, no end point, and not even a decision by the Prime Minister whether he wants a pipeline at all. And he's wasted an entire year. A pipeline to the Pacific would move $30 billion of oil every year. That's more than our total annual exports to China. So why is Mark Carney still blocking it? You know what this pipeline needs to happen? It needs only one thing: for Mark Carney to get out of the way. It is wildly profitable. It doesn't need any government handouts. It just needs a permit to go ahead. Let's get rid of the industrial carbon tax, the anti-development law C-69, the ban on shipping energy off the north coast of BC, grant the permit today, get the project built so that we can start shipping our oil to the world at world prices, making us stronger, richer, more affordable, and self-reliant.
There will be those who will be unhappy if the industrial carbon tax increases at all. The current details are better than what was to be imposed by the Trudeau government, which said the industrial carbon tax was to increase to $170 a ton by the year 2030. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
U.S. President Donald Trump is in Beijing. He is there for a summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Ahead of the meeting, the American president said he'll be talking with Xi about trade more than anything else. Professor Elliot Tepper is Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. And I'm so glad we could connect with you today, Professor. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, good to be back on with you, Rob.
What do you think Donald Trump's goals are for this summit?
Well, there's three kind of stated goals, broadly speaking, and one that they will actually be dealing with, but not overtly. It's really about trade, technology, and Taiwan. And these are issues of critical importance to China and to the U.S. Basically, they're trying to extend the tentative truce between these two superpowers. Sometimes we say the world is now G2, only two big powers. As you know, last year there was a big trade war going on. Donald Trump put high tariffs on China, but they reciprocated because they have almost a monopoly on critical minerals, and they squeezed. Then at that point it was time for something like a truce, and we're seeing a continuation of it. Last October there was a meeting on the sides of another meeting happening in Asia, and something called the Busan Truce was arranged. It was in South Korea. And that lowered the tariffs on the one hand that the U.S. was charging, and China released their stranglehold on critical minerals so that the world's currency, the world's economy could continue. This basically can be seen as a way to formalize and extend, because that particular truce runs out next October. It was a one-year agreement. So let's make a bunch of new agreements on the issue of trade and also on technology. And there would have to be a conversation about Taiwan because China will insist on it.
And what does China hope to gain, Professor?
Well, China wants a lot out of this. They've agreed something important to the U.S. and to Canada. One of the things buried away in all this was fentanyl enforcement. Is they have precursors of fentanyl, and they said, we'll look after this. So the question is, what does China want out of this?
Yeah.
You know, what China wants out of this is a couple very important things. They want managed trade. They want to say, yes, we will uphold our side of the bargain. We will continue to allow normal trade to go on, but we want something in exchange. And this is where it gets really dicey, because on the one hand, they are very welcoming of some of the technology and some of the other things, but they really want to stop American traditional policy, and particularly Donald Trump's policy regarding Taiwan. That's the core interest of the core interest, according to Xi Jinping. America is responsible, is required under U.S. law to provide armaments to Taiwan, but not to come to Taiwan's defense. That is, if something happens. So strategic ambiguity is in place. The U.S. says, yes, we have to, under law, provide armaments, and an $11 billion deal is presently pending. China would like to short-circuit that, but the other side of that is the U.S. Has made these commitments. So will Donald Trump put Taiwan on the menu and make it a bartering chip, which is contrary to American law and, of course, to, I think, Canadian and other interests?
Ahead of the meeting, Donald Trump was asked if the Iran war would come up. He said, well, that's under control, as though it was some kind of minor issue. But how big of an issue do you think that will be for these two leaders?
That's why I was saying there's a formal agenda and kind of an informal agenda, and I think that's a big ticket item on the informal agenda. China is the primary supporter of Iran. They buy Iran's oil, approximately 80% of Iran's oil that gets sold, and therefore their only source of income goes to China, and China in turn is providing technology, some of it a little mysterious to us, so they are primary partners. Will they be at all interested in assisting the U.S. out of what looks to be an ever weakening position by the American president because of that Iran war? So I think the U.S. will be trying to use its leverage on the trade and the technology issues to push back. But the real concern is that Taiwan will now be a bargaining chip in a way that it should not do in order to get Iran some pressure from China. So that's kind of the subtext of all this. That's very worrying for all of us who are watching it.
Okay. If you'll just hang in there for a few minutes, Professor, a few more questions for you. Why are so many corporate CEOs part of the U.S. delegation on this trip, and what does it all mean for Canada? When we come back, Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University is our guest on Now You Know. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow, Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University, is with us as we examine U.S. President Donald Trump's trip to China. There are about 18 CEOs on this trip, part of the U.S. delegation, big names like Elon Musk, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, as well as the CEO of NVIDIA. Why do you think all of these CEOs are part of this trip?
I think it's an interesting power play by the U.S. They're saying, look, there's a digital iron curtain right now around China. You can't make the progress you could make if only you smarten up and release some of the restrictions that you have on the role that foreigners can play in your country, but also there's real issues about intellectual property theft. If you crack down on that, if you bring in your company, you will steal their stuff. If you get serious on that, we can really bring big technological assistance to you. But Rob, this is a two-edged sword because the big names that you mentioned are visible, but there's also a bunch of security and defense, very large firms that are there.
Yes.
So who are they really going to lobby Trump about? It's this is U.S. showing its muscle. Boy, we've got the technological advantage, but those same players can turn around on Trump and say, really, you got to make a deal on this, so give up on this, give up on that. Who cares? Big, important strategic issues. So it's a mixed blessing, but the main thing is, yes, big muscle is being brought along to support Donald Trump on this visit. The whole question of the intellectual property is very important, but it's really also about the future. AI safety is going to be one of the issues here. It would be great if something came out between the two powers saying we are now going to set up a management regime. And speaking personally, I'd like it on nukes as well, but certainly on AI let's work together to put up some guardrails.
Okay. It wasn't that long ago that Mark Carney was in China, struck a deal with China, a tariff relief for some Canadian industries, EVs for sale here in Canada, Chinese-made EVs. That's already starting. What's in this for Canada? Why is it important for Canada?
If there's multiple levels on this, Rob. If a management regime can be put in place between the two biggest economic powers, that's of benefit to everybody. All states in the world need some more reliability and less unpredictability. Perhaps that'll come out of this. But there's also the possibility that the deal that will be struck bilaterally between China and the U.S. will include the very items that Canada managed to get some comfort on when we were there. So China has agreed to stop punishing Canada, as they were doing, by saying, okay, now we'll go back to buying the canola, the pork, the wheat, the potash from the West. In exchange, Canada will lay off on some of these other issues that you've been nagging us about, like the two Michaels. So let's go back to normal and helpful. But a trade deal between between the U.S. and China that covers those same areas, including possibility of letting in EVs, could in fact take some of the stuffing out of what we had hoped to gain by our efforts to normalize with a very troublesome, deeply troublesome regime. China has been accused of interfering in our elections, after all, in addition to locking up the two Michaels.
Okay. Always great to hear from you and get your perspective and learn from your expertise, Professor. Thank you so much.
Oh, good to be back with you, Rob. Anytime.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Our Newsday panel, our focus on federal politics, coming up next on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
It's time for our Wednesday Newsday panel, focusing on federal politics today with Ashton Arsenault, a partner at Crestview Strategies. Great to hear from you again, Ashton. Welcome back.
Good to be here, Rob.
And Garry Keller, Vice President at Strategy Corp. Gary, good to hear from you again.
Great to be back, Rob.
And let's start with you, Garry, since you're the Alberta guy. What do you think of the news reports that Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith could finalize a deal on the industrial carbon tax and maybe a pipeline to the West Coast, maybe as soon as Friday?
Well, it sounds like it's a very real proposition, and it's been interesting following the bouncing ball here in Ottawa over the last 6 weeks or so. You know, at the beginning of April, when the MOU deadline came and went, you know, a lot of folks on both the federal and provincial side said, well, we're just crossing a few T's and dotting a few I's. And then that kind of went away. And as we got closer to the end of the month, I was hearing from a number of folks, both industrial and in government, especially in Alberta, saying, oh, man, this thing is off the rails. The folks at Environment and Climate Change Canada, the bureaucrats have got their fingers into the mix, and it's totally off the rails, not very optimistic. And then last Friday, the Premier in Ottawa, with a very positive signal for both the announcement on industrial carbon price and a pipeline to the West Coast. And I believe it was Mark Carney who said, probable, not possible. And so I think it could be a very interesting day on Friday, not just for the impact to the energy sector and the growth of the oil and gas production in Canada, but also for the upcoming separation discussion and the ongoing debate around Alberta's role in Canada.
What do you think about this development? Ashton, I'd have your take.
Yeah, I love it. I think it'd be welcome news across several industries, and it has the potential to impact thousands of jobs really across the country. And I'm of the opinion that there is a lot riding on getting the finer points of this MOU right, because there's a lot riding on it at the end of the day. I think people should want it to be successful. And look, at this point, they've already missed a few deadlines on this thing, and people are getting a little bit antsy, to Garry's point. And so the sooner they can make progress on this, from my point of view, better yet, the sooner they can actually get things done within it, I think all the better still. There's a lot at stake here, right? So you've got federal-provincial relationships, you've got investor certainty, you've got project approvals, the list goes on. And so at the end of the day, I'm choosing to believe that this MOU and what it outlines and agrees to is, in the interests of all Canadians, and I'm hopeful it will receive broad-based support and move quickly.
Okay. What are the chances, Garry, do you think that such an agreement could cool whatever momentum the independence movement seems to have right now in Alberta?
That's a really great question, because at the heart of this, I think Danielle Smith, she knows that there is not just an independence movement, but a separatist movement within Alberta. And it's important to note the difference between the two. Okay. I think at the core of it, there of the people who are interested or potentially open to voting for separation, there are some hardcore independence folks, and then there's a number of other folks who are also in Alberta who are also, they're upset with the Federation, they're upset with the Liberal government, they're upset about the set of rules that are in place, but they're soft separatists. They might vote in favor if they're of separation because they're angry about other issues. They're not hardcore independentistes, if you will. So I think, Danielle Smith has tried to portray herself as the bulwark against separation, that she is the one who can negotiate with Ottawa. She is the one who can get a deal here through and act as that safety valve release against those who may not be pure independence views or independence related, but are actually, they're just mad at Ottawa for a wide variety of reasons. It's a heck of a bet. It's challenging, but I do believe that's what's going on here.
Ashton, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's cooled down a little bit in the last couple of days, perhaps because the driving forces behind it may have acted inappropriately. I say may because we don't know for sure, and it's currently before the courts. But I can argue this in a few different ways. But at the end of the day, I fundamentally believe that Albertans have legitimate gripes about how they've been treated by the federal government and the Federation, that is Canada. What I don't believe is that independence is the correct course of action. So, I do think things like this MOU go a long way towards indicating to those who believe in independence for Alberta that the federal government, considers the province a partner as opposed to an adversary. And so more than anything else, this is a dialogue that's been opened, is more needed, absolutely, but hammering together this agreement and working to get what is being outlined in it, of course, done, definitely sends the right signals, in my opinion.
What do you think Prime Minister Carney says to David Eby, Ashton?
Go along to get along. It can't always be me. And also, Mr. Eby has his own political challenges for the time being.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. What do you think about that? What does that conversation sound like, Garry?
Well, maybe it sounds a little bit like, I know what you're thinking, and I hear you, but man, here's some extra housing dollars, or here's some extra infrastructure dollars for the province of BC, more than you're entitled to. Perhaps that would help you out, especially when you're in a bit of a bind here politically. So there can be a bit of a balancing act, and that would not be unusual. I've seen it many times from all parties of all political stripes.
Right. Plus, how many of those of the projects have been unveiled as on the list for major projects? Like, how many of them are in BC? 4 or 5 of them already.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of them are in Alberta. So, okay. When we come back, let's talk about that sound you hear. That's Stephen Guilbeault's head exploding. When we come back, this is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Here with Ashton Arsenault from Crestview Strategies and Garry Keller, Vice President of Strategy Corp. What do you think the reaction will be from Stephen Guilbeault and the so-called Environment Caucus of the Liberal Party in Ottawa, if such a deal is, say, finalized between Alberta and Ottawa on Friday? Ashton, how do you think that goes over in Ottawa?
Sure. I mean, I'll stick with Mr. Guilbeault. I mean, he quit cabinet over it. End of story in my mind. And this is an individual that wants to put Canada at a competitive disadvantage around the world and have our economy in tatters in order for it to align with his ideology. And look, you'll have to forgive me for not caring too much about what he thinks these days. You know, he's long stated his goals of demanding that everyone be forced to buy an electric vehicle and keep Canada's most valuable and marketable assets, mainly our natural resources, either in the ground or landlocked for reasons I'll never be able to understand. So, you know, to those pushing back against this agreement, you know, does this economy feel particularly strong at the moment? Does just the basic task of living seem affordable at the moment? And are you comfortable living in a country that shed 18,000 jobs last quarter? My answer to all 3 of those would be no.
This is me nodding in agreement, Ashton, just to let you know on the radio. Garry, what do you think, Garry?
Well, Mr. Guilbeault is a proud member of a wing of the Liberal Party known as the Mud Hut wing of the Liberal Party. You make that what you will. Those who are the sort of environmental wing and would rather have no development, as Ashton has so ably pointed out his track record. Look, it's very clear from what people are saying in and around Ottawa. If he's very upset about the state of play, you know, he went out and shock horror last week said that what was being proposed in the new suite of regulatory changes that came out on Friday was worse than Stephen Harper could ever imagine. So coming from Mr. Guilbeault, that's quite alarmist for sure, but I kid in some ways. But you know, he does have to make a decision about his future. Is he going to stay within the Liberal caucus, or is he going to take his ball and go home or go somewhere else? The other question is, there are people like him in the Liberal caucus. The flip side to that is it's very clear that Mr. Carney believes that he has political capital to spend, and he's willing to spend it on this agreement despite the reaction of the Mud Hut wing of the Liberal Party.
Yeah. Well, there is a provincial election coming up in Quebec. Maybe the provincial Liberals can have him run in Montreal or something. It's not like he would be out of work for very long, I don't think. But
he feels more like a Quebec Solidaire type candidate.
Yeah, you're probably right there. Yeah. All right, Garry, sticking with you, what do you think the government in Ottawa is most interested in about Trump's trip to China?
Well, I think they're going to be watching very closely the types of agreements that come out of this trip. Now, taking a step back, you know, Trump really wanted this trip to go very well for him. He's been making noises about forcing China to do all sorts of things to open its economy up to American industry, American products, and he has very few cards to play. The war with Iran has gone very, very badly, and Xi Jinping and China can wait him out. So I think the fact that Trump is taking a suite of executives with him, some senior CEOs from a range of industries, names you'd all recognize, to try to do business in China. And so I think they're probably looking at it from twofold. One, what, if any, agreements come out of this trip that could impact Canada and Canadian business? But two, you know, are there potential investments in Canada? There are people are investing, including Chinese companies, are investing in Canada to get access to the American markets through CUSMA and other avenues. How does that impact that? So I think that is really where they're going to be watching this going forward. But I'm not expecting a lot out of this deal. A lot of heat and fury, and not a lot of substance.
Oh, I see. Okay, Ashton, what do you think they're watching in Ottawa as Trump is in China?
Yeah, so I mean, as we know, there's been some intense canoodling with China over the last little bit on our part, that being Canada. And I think more than anything else, Gary's broadly correct, but I think they're looking at the tone of the interactions, how hard and forceful the Americans will push back against the Chinese and what the Chinese will do to defend themselves, and more broadly, whether or not this creates any leverage points as it relates to renegotiating USMCA or CUSMA, depending on where you're approaching that issue from. I again, broadly agree with Garry. I don't think this is going to lead to any particular fireworks for a myriad of reasons, but if I'm watching this out of PMO, I'm mostly looking at tone, and I'm mostly looking at the announceables and what specifically they might be able to hammer out in terms of pathways forward or deals in particular.
Okay. When we come back, we'll try to put a Canadian spin on UK politics. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
We're here with Ashton, Arsenault, and Garry Keller talking politics on a Wednesday. So in the UK, where there have been 4 prime ministers in 4 years, and 5 in the last 10, if you go back to Theresa May, the Labour Party won a massive majority government, in excess of 400 seats in the British House of Commons, just 18 months ago. Now Prime Minister Keir Starmer is losing cabinet ministers. He has dozens of MPs, upwards of 90 MPs, are calling on him to resign. A year and a half after a massive majority government. I just wonder, are there any lessons for Mark Carney's very popular government right now, given these recent UK events? Ashton, what would you say?
I think ultimately the answer is no. I mean, Mr. Starmer's goose is cooked. And to me, this is sort of following a trend line of the United Kingdom sort of embracing the mayhem that often happens in Australia, where leaders get beaten to death, often with smiles on people's faces. So I don't think that type of export, let's call it, has made its way to Canada just yet. And quite frankly, Mark Carney is still a rather popular prime minister. I would even argue he's still in the middle of the honeymoon period. So I don't really see this being the case for the way his government's going to go, Rob.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Garry, what do you think?
It's funny Ashton referenced Australia, because there's a period, or there used to be a period every year where leaders were vulnerable to leadership spills. And in Australia, they're very subtle. They call it, quote unquote, the killing season. So that's our Australian friends. Look, I think the lesson for Mr. Carney is that nothing lasts forever, and where you think you may be popular one day can turn quickly overnight, especially around issues around affordability, immigration, economic challenges. That's where Starmer is losing. But also, what it highlights too is the difference between the Canadian and UK systems, despite our similarities. Much looser caucus unity on these things, the ability to challenge a leader is much easier. And we saw this last fall in Ottawa, 2024 in Ottawa, where people were thought they were challenging Prime Minister Trudeau, but nobody would come out and say anything. They were all a bunch of chocolate soldiers who just melted away at the first amount of heat at this. This is a bit different. This is their system. So in that way, it's probably not a lesson from Mark Carney. But I think the main lesson is nothing lasts forever, and popularity can change quickly, especially in this age of social media.
Yeah, Ashton says Starmer's goose is cooked. He says he wants to get on with the business of governing. There doesn't have to be an election for another 3 years in the UK. Whether Prime Minister Starmer's still around by then or not, I know Ashton doesn't think so. But the most popular politician right now, according to all the polls in the UK, is Nigel Farage. Okay, so entertain me just a little bit. Okay, here you have Prime Minister Mark Carney, very outspoken against Brexit. Imagine if he ever has to meet Prime Minister Nigel Farage, basically the de facto leader of Brexit way back in the day. I'd like to be a fly on that wall for that one.
Well, Nigel Farage loves a pint, so maybe they could get together over a pint and solve all the world's problems. But you're right. The Labour is going to go through a leadership spill. Starmer is toast. And there's going to be somebody else who comes up through the ranks. Looks like maybe Ed Miliband, West Streeting is being talked about, but I don't think Starmer's going to last. He may not last a week, let alone 2 months.
Okay.
From now.
A ridiculous anecdote, but I shared a cigarette with Nigel Farage when he was in Ottawa back in 2012. Terrible habit. Don't recommend it. I don't do it anymore, but surprisingly charming, Rob.
I had a fight with him at the European Parliament when he was an MEP. Again, charming, entertaining.
Listen to you. Okay. All right. The two of you name droppers. I'll let you go. Great to hear from you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.
Ashton Arsenault, partner at Crestview Strategies, smoking buddy of Nigel Farage. Garry Keller, vice president at Strategy Corp, drinking buddy of Nigel Farage. I'm Rob Snow. I go it alone, I guess. But not after the news. Is Talkback. First live Talkback of the week. Hope you'll join our discussion. It's an interesting one today. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, big life decisions. Getting married, starting a family, buying a house. Getting married, starting a family, buying a house. Here's what we want to know. How old were you? How old were you when you made these big decisions in life? Getting married, starting a family, buying a house. Were you in your 20s? Were you in your 30s? Were you older than that? Were you never married or started a family or bought a house? We bring this up today because of a recent report from StatsCan. It says younger generations are doing all of those things later in life than previous generations. That won't come as a shock to many of you, but it's solid data that backs up what most of us already know. But it's a report that also notes that owning a home is seen by many Canadians as being part of the Canadian dream. Owning a home is part of the Canadian dream. And for younger generations, this report focuses on millennials, but younger generations are not only finding it harder to afford a home, but that is leading people in that age group to delay those other big life decisions, like getting married, like starting a family. So we would really like to hear from people of all ages today, from all generations. Because if that's the case, and it's clearly the case, we must ask, what does that say about the current state of the Canadian dream? Is the Canadian dream alive and well? Or is the Canadian dream dead and buried? What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. This is all based on census data. See, that's why you need to fill out your census forms, everyone. So Stats can produce reports like this, and we can talk about them on the radio. This looked at the 2021 census data, and it found that the share of Canadians between the ages of 25 and 39 still living with their parents, 25 to 39, still living with their parents, stood at 16%. Twice the share of the baby boomers when the baby boomers were the same age. Back in 1991. It was 8%. Went from 8% to 16%. It also says millennials had the lowest rate of home ownership when compared to the Gen Xers and baby boomers when they were the same age. And fewer millennials were married with children, stood at 26%, compared with 34% for Gen Xers, 46% for the baby boomers when they were the same age. Baby boomers, 1991, almost half of them between the ages of 25 and 39, they weren't living with their parents. They were married with children. Far from the case anymore. More millennials are still living at home. Fewer of them own their own homes. And fewer still are getting married and having children. And those numbers are even worse in Toronto, even worse in Vancouver, because they're the two most expensive cities in the country. Now, back in 2024, the federal government, it was the final year of the Trudeau government, you'll remember, as much as some of you would like to forget. But back then, just 2 years ago, the government promised it would restore the Canadian dream and make housing more affordable for younger Canadians, part of these generations. Generational fairness was all the rage. But it's now been 15 years of declining home ownership rates across the country. The home ownership rate peaked in the year 2011. It's been falling ever since. And for millennials, and guaranteed, next it will be the same for Gen Z, that means other big life decisions are on hold. Like getting married, like starting a family. So what does that say about the state of the Canadian dream? Is the Canadian dream still possible to achieve, or is it becoming more of an elusive myth? Something that maybe used to exist in Canada, but doesn't exist anymore, if you are under a certain age. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. So again, just to get the conversation started today, I've been away for almost a week. So it is very nice to be back with you live today and alive with you today. Let's start with these very basic questions, okay? How old were you when you got married? How old were you when you started a family? How old were you when you bought a house? Whatever order all of that happened in for you. And given that some of those things are happening much later in life now for millions of Canadians under a certain age, if they ever happen at all, what does that say about the Canadian dream? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. That's our call-in line. If you've never called before, just mention that, and we'll make your call a priority. And let's talk about those big life decisions. I'm Rob Snow. First talkback for me for the week. Love to hear from you and get the conversation started. This is Now You Know. This is Talkback, and it's News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Big life decisions. That's our topic today. How old were you when you got married? How old were you when you started a family? How old were you when you bought a house? Whatever order that happened in. And given that some of those things are happening much later in life, for millennials, for younger generations, if they ever happen at all. What does that say about the state of the Canadian dream? 1-833-668-2577. And let's get it started. Rick is in Southern Alberta. Hi, Rick.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Rick. Yeah, good to hear from you. Yeah.
Good. First-time caller.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You say that. Now, yeah, I'm living the dream, Rob.
You're living the dream. Yeah. Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
I was married at 20.
Married at 20?
I was into an employment that I started when I was 17. We built a house when we were 21, and it was a 1,200 square foot home. And for $36,000. Our lot was $10,000. So a total of, I think it was around $49,000 was a total of the property and house.
Wow.
Started raising kids when we were 21, age of 21, and we kept on. We had 5 kids. But we had a space between our first litter and our second litter of about 13 years.
Right.
And so we were raising kids till we were in our 60s. So I retired when I was 56 with a full pension, 40 years of service in the same company. And and I'm worried sick about my grandkids. Grandkids.
If I could, Rick, just ask you a few more questions about this. I mean, getting married, buying a house at age 20, 21, what $49,000 house at that. I mean, what year would that have been? Do you recall?
That was 1979.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Right. When the interest rates were really low, Rick.
Yeah, they were really low. Then they spiked to like 20% in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so thank goodness I locked into a mortgage of 5 years, and I missed that 20%, 22, 23%.
Oh, you got lucky. Yeah.
I was locked in.
I mean, when you hear that, this is 25 to 39 years old, we have 16% of Canadians in that age group still living with their parents. Another 9% living with relatives or other people, but not a spouse or a partner. Okay, you're talking about 25% of the millennial population is not married with children in their own house. Like, what do you think of that? Does that disturb you at all? Trouble you at all?
That's scary because I've got grandkids that could be in that same predicament. I mean, my kids, we had a daughter that divorced her husband after 7 years and came to live with us for 18 months, and that just about drove me nuts with a big dog, and love her to pieces, but holy lightning, it was tough. It was tough going for 18 months. And then we finally got her moved out into her own little place there after she got some good employment. But it's a scary time for these kids. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough.
We had a house paid off in 15 years, and so
15 years. Wow.
By the age of 35, we were free of a mortgage, and now that house, my house today, with a new with a huge garage added, a double car garage added onto the side of it, is well over $500,000.
Wow.
So I don't. Yeah.
How times have changed, Rick. How times have changed. So you would agree then that there's something kind of wrong with the Canadian dream right now and where things stand then.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's interesting, Rick. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being a first-time caller, Rick, and getting us off to a good start. Let's go to Listowel, Ontario. Patty is there. Hello, Patty.
Yes. Hi. I'm also a first-time caller because half the time I don't have paper nearby to write down the phone number of who I need to call back into. So, have been trying to call many, many times. But, this is a great topic. Married at 21 and almost 22, bought a house. We were 22, 23. We did 1 year of apartment renting. We thought, okay, this is crazy. And then started having kids. I was about 27. So
27.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm very fortunate. All my kids now, they all own houses. I guess they saw the same thing. If you can try to do it. But it's tough because first you need a really good job with benefits, and I can't remember, is it 20 or 25% in different provinces where you need to have a down payment in order to purchase the first house?
I'm not sure about that, Patty, but let me ask you now, with you started a family at 27. You said that all your children are in their own homes now. That's good to hear. Are they also starting families? Like you have grandchildren?
And they've actually got kids that are in college also. Yep.
Right. Okay. So when you hear that, we have so many, I mean, this is millions of people. This is millions of younger Canadians who are still living at home with their parents. And it's been a steady decline. People living with a spouse or a partner with their own children in their own house. When you hear that, what do you think?
You know what? I would take a look at what are they spending their money on? You know, like, are they dressing themselves better? Are they buying expensive clothes? Are they going out way too much? Like, are they not savers? Have they never really been taught how to save or invest or do anything like that? You know, but sometimes you have no choice, and you might have to live with mom and dad or grandma or grandpa or somebody for a short period of time until you really get your feet planted and know what direction you want to go.
Yeah, but a short period of time used to mean, you know, you'd be out of the house at what, 24, 25 years old? You'd be out of the house at 24, 25?
Yep.
Well, now it's, 35 is not unusual.
And then they come, like he said, that previous caller that said, sometimes you have family that have to come back in with you for a period of time, but then you try to get settled again. And, I don't know if it's a matter of do we need more government incentives to help here, or do we need better jobs? It's tough to get a really good job with benefits and full-time and try to get it in the field that they actually studied for.
Yeah, but you've also touched on something else that comes up whenever we talk about issues like this, and that is, what about our lifestyles, our needs, our wants? Do we want too much? Do we want too much right now? Saving versus spending. Yeah, you raised a lot of good points, Patty. Thank you. Be right back. Talkback today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Where we are talking today about big life decisions, getting married, starting a family, buying a house. How old were you when all of that happened for you? Because it's happening much later in life now for the millennials, let alone Gen Z. What does that say about the Canadian dream? Home ownership, for example, is supposed to be part of the Canadian dream. Eric is in Halifax. Hello, Eric.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you're feeling a lot better.
Oh yeah, I was down for the count there for a while, Eric. I appreciate your good wishes. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm going to give you another wish. Ottawa and the PWHL are going to beat Montreal.
Oh, it's going to be a tall order. We'll see what happens with it.
Okay, then. 32 years old. I thought I knew what I was doing, but it turned out to be a disaster. That was a marriage. Bought my first house in my early 40s. Paid $120,000. That turned out to be a disaster. And I find that today, the dream is more like a fantasy. It's more like Fantasy Island, because the cost of living goes down, and the wages are terrible. So I don't know how anybody can make it today. I just don't have no answers.
Yeah. Now, this house that you bought for $120,000, was that in Nova Scotia?
Yes,
Eric?
it was in Nova Scotia. Yeah.
Was it in the Halifax area?
Elmsdale.
Oh, out by the airport that way, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
What do you figure that house is worth now? Houses out that way, what are they worth now?
We're triple that now. Immigrants took it over, and then I looked at it a couple of times, and it looked like something that was demolished. I mean, the people that bought it just didn't let it,
Well, yeah, that's either here nor there. But I mean, I'm just trying to, I guess, make a point. Yeah. It was probably an arduous task for you to come up with the money to be able to afford a mortgage on a $120,000 house. Imagine what it's like for the 25 or 30-year-old now, right?
Well, me and the one that was the getter, we're making over $100,000 a year. I was with the city of Halifax, and she was with Bell Telephone, so we were pulling down good bucks. So it wasn't too bad back in the 80s and late 80s. So I mean, it was pretty.
Well, that would have been good money back then. Yeah, that would have been good money back then.
More like a dream. I was sitting on top of the world at that particular point.
Right, I got you. Thank you, Eric. Good to hear from you. All the best to you. the Canadian dream, and big life decisions like buying houses, starting families, getting married. That's our topic today. The latest breaking news coming up next here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about those big life decisions like getting married, starting families, buying homes. How old were you when all of that happened for you? It's happening much later in life for millions of Canadians. As you know, there's a new StatsCan report backing that up. What does that say about the Canadian dream? So many Canadians view, for example, buying a home as being part of the Canadian dream. And if they can't buy a home, they feel as though they're not participating in the Canadian dream or not living the Canadian life to its fullest. And as a result, it has this ripple effect. They feel as though they don't have the stability to get married, to start a family, because of what I would say is a lack of permanence in their housing situation that comes with owning a home. 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Ken in Wyerton, Ontario. Hello, Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, Rob. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Good to hear from you. Yeah, what would you say, Ken? Tell us about it.
Well, I guess I got married when I was 23. That was like 41 years ago this year. We got married and we got a job working in a mine in Northern Ontario underground as a pretty young guy, and had kids right away by the time we were 22 and 23. So we did well. We had a company house provided, a brand new 3-bedroom house for $27,500, of course subsidized by the company. So that gave us a good leg up, you know.
Sure.
So the dream was reality for us. We stayed there and worked for the mine for 10 years, and we were under the condition we were allowed to sell the house privately after we did 10 years of service. So we flipped that home and several other homes over, you know, our kids' lifetimes and our lifetimes, and to this point. And so I think we did good. I don't think the same applies to the modern generation right now. I don't see how it's possible to achieve the same thing.
Right. And as for your children, say for example, how are they doing, say, fair compared to how you were doing at their age?
Well, they got lucky as well, I guess. They both had got good jobs. And they both have homes. And my oldest son has 2 homes, one in Kelowna and one in Arizona. So they're doing really well. They work for Amazon, both of them, husband and wife, making the big bucks, and they can afford more than one home. And the younger lad and his wife and family and our grandchildren, they're all doing great. And they own their own home as well. Mind you, they have a long mortgage on it, so that'll be a long time before it's paid off. But they've been successful. But I feel that'd be difficult for anybody starting out now with the home prices, et cetera.
Well, they would seem to be the exception and not the rule, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's not a lot of jobs out there where you can take on a job in your 20s and, you know, and move right up and buy a house right away. And I guess that's that dream, as far as I can see it, is not attainable. And I don't know what the answer is with the amount of debt we have. You know, the grandchildren and great grandchildren, they'll never see a way out of that debt. And the housing crisis is, you know, we need a lot more homes. We have a lot more people living in this country now. So demand is high.
Right. Yeah. So you feel as though there is something wrong with the Canadian dream. Would that be fair to say right now?
Yeah.
For younger generations, yes. Compared to you know how well things went for you, right?
Yep.
That same kind
absolutely.
of social contract doesn't seem to be there right now. I think is what's frustrating with so many people right now. Yeah, in Wyerton. Thank you, Ken, for your call. Let's go to Kitchener. Ontario. Dan is in Kitchener. Hi, Dan.
Hey, good afternoon, Rob.
Yeah, very good to hear from you, Dan. Thank you.
So,
Sure.
okay, I got married at 35. I bought a house at 42. I'm a month away from turning 52. So I started a little later in life, but
yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. We didn't have children, which has helped. I bought my house for roughly $245,000 in Kitchener back in 2009. It's worth between $675 and $750 now, which is fantastic. Wow. But I was able to do that by
fantastic for you, not fantastic for the person who might buy it from you, right?
No, but
great for you.
But, you know, so I've been noticing a pattern amongst your previous callers there of an older generation, started younger in life, you know, started working at 17, stayed with the same company, you know, all these people had great jobs from when they were young and stuck with it, and they were buying, you know, $40,000 houses. I don't know how that translates into today's numbers, but, you know, I'm not an educated person. I did this working retail jobs and food service jobs, and you know, you can go without, right? I know a lot of people now. Like I learned a lesson from one of my managers back then. It's not how much money you make; it's what you do with the money that you make, right? So, house prices are out of control right now. But what are we doing with the money that we're making? Are we taking an Uber to work every day? Are we getting one Starbucks delivered from a food delivery app, right? Like it's what are individuals doing to save their money?
Yes. A previous caller, racist Patty in Listowel, wondered this. Is there something with the, say, younger culture for millennials and Gen Z that it's a right now kind of culture? FOMO, fear of missing out kind of culture, you know?
Yeah. How many streaming services do we need? How many subscriptions do we need? It's there's a lot of money there. It's just a matter of what are we choosing to do with it. And not saying that every situation is like that. Sure, not a lot of people are making a lot of money, but there's a lot of people that go to university and come out of university and have great paying jobs. Right, and these people can easily afford homes. So who is the Canadian dream not attainable? Like who's not being able to achieve this dream?
Okay. So you think it's still alive and well, the Canadian dream?
Well, if the Canadian dream is leaving high school at 16 and getting a manufacturing job for the rest of your life, and was that the Canadian dream 40 years ago? Like it's not the same situation now. I think
right.
The dream is what you make of it.
Okay, thank you. Yep, good to hear from you. Bit of a different perspective there. I would say the minority view. But Dan in Kitchener raises that again. You know, what about lifestyle needs, wants, desires, expectations? Have they changed? 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On big life decisions that are delayed more often now for young people. John in Lethbridge. Hello, John. Hi, John.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi, John. Good to hear from you, John.
Thank you. Glad to be on your show. I've been on your show before, and I've enjoyed your show very much. What I'm going to discuss may bring some humor to you, to yourself. But when I was married, I was married at the age of 22, still in college, and the day we got married was our last day in college. And to put a twist on thing, I was married 2 weeks before I was supposed to be married, and I married a different woman. But going on,
okay.
I had, and that was the age of 22.
Right.
2 years later, I had my first children. And by the time I was 30, I had 4 daughters. And being not trained in hardly anything, the first 10 years were very hard. Not working all the time, trying to raise 4 daughters, trying to go back to trade school. It was hard. And that's up until the like owning a house and everything. I was 1986 before I had my first house, and we lived in the house for 32 years. Most enjoyable time of my life. I'm 78 right now, going on 79. I've had a good life, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't want to have to do it again.
Right.
Amount of responsibility.
You think it would be harder now? Do you think it's harder now, John?
Yes, because a lot of these young kids, bless their hearts, where do they start? Like, how do they get any kind of how people perceive them, how they can get ahead, how to start themselves in life? A lot of these kids aren't trained for that, nor was I. You learn by experience, and that was hard. I've raised 4 daughters. They're all good women. I have a good wife. I don't know how she ever put up with me, but long story short,
yes,
it would be hard for younger people. I have 2 grandchildren, and like they're now just learning how to kind of maneuver around getting educated, and like it's going to take years for them to get trained. Fortunately, they live at home, so they can kind of get help from their parents. No, it would not be hard. It would be hard to start all over again. I don't envy anybody for that.
All right, John. I got to run, John, just because the phone lines are jammed on the topic today. I appreciate hearing your voice again today. Let's go to Sylvan Lake, Alberta. Wade is there. Hello, Wade.
Rob.
Yeah, Wade.
Hello. Hey, how you doing?
I got you, Wade. Good, Wade. Yeah, better than I was. Thank you.
Yeah, wasn't antivirus, was it?
No. But I was thinking, gosh, given what I've got, I don't want that antivirus. If creepers, because I thought I was a goner there for a while, but I survived. Yeah,
I'm
Wade.
glad, I missed you.
Well, thank you, Wade.
Yeah,
That's
so
kind of you to say.
I bought my first house when I was 18 years old.
18 years old. Holy cow.
Yeah. Before I bought that house, I actually lived in a holiday trailer right through the Saskatchewan winter with no water. And because the water was froze up, but we made it through. And I don't know how the younger generation is going to do it. We currently have 2 children who are adults now. We put them both to university, and they're both standing on their own 2 feet and carrying their own SH1T in this life, which is something I really, really pushed. But it is my grandchildren that is the most concerning to me, because with the level of debt we've got in this country and the amount of waste that our federal government just wastes our money on a daily basis, it's incredible, when we could use that money here to look after ourselves.
Right. You feel as though it will be more difficult for the millennials and younger?
Absolutely.
Some millennials, some of the millennials are in their 40s now, but we have millennials in their 30s still living at home, Wade.
Yeah, I know. And
not an insignificant numbers. Oh, I think we've lost him. Wade, thank you for the call and the good wishes. Appreciate that. Be right back with more of your calls just ahead here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's a really interesting report from StatsCan. What it did was it looked at 3 census cycles, 1991, 2006, 2021. Okay, give us some big life decisions in 1991 for the baby boomers, in 2006 for the Gen Xers, people my age, and then 2021 focusing on the millennials. Big changes, for example, in the kinds of homes people were living in the 2 most expensive cities, Toronto and Vancouver. So in Vancouver, in 1991, 36% of the baby boomers in 1991 could live in a single-family home in Vancouver. As of 2021, the last census for millennials, it was down to 12%. Went from 36% down to 12%, and it pretty similar in Toronto. In Toronto, 32% of baby boomers in 1991 had a single-family house. And by 2021, it had fallen to less than 20%. And it's easier to raise a family in a single-family house than it is in, say, a 2-bedroom condo or even a 3-bedroom townhouse. Let's go to, where are we going next? Sorry, John. Yes, John in Calgary. Hello, John.
Hi, Rob. Good to hear you're still kicking and screaming.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm a Gen Xer too. Wife and I, we bought a house in Calgary back in 2000 and we were lucky too because we got a 40-year amortization on the mortgage, which was something they just handed out briefly for a few moments there in time. We locked out, we got into that, which made it possible for us to get a house. And also the wife, she was a student going to university here. I was subcontractor for doing siding. And the one thing that really helped us back then was my employer at the time wrote up a page to give to the bank to reassure that I am a subcontractor, but I'm in the range of making anywhere from $90,000 to $110,000 a year. So with these little things, we saved up everything we possibly can for about 6 years prior before we bought the house, $27,000 down. And today, I doubt anybody can do this with the way everything costs. One thing nobody's talking about is insurance rates. They are not capped, so they just keep on getting higher and higher, which squeezes your penny at the bottom of the line. Like if the wife and I were to do it again today, I don't think we'd make it.
Thank you.
We also
thank you for the good wishes. They're going to cut us both off, John. Be right back with hour number 2 of Talkback right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback on this Wednesday. Great to be back with you. Big life decisions. We've been talking about big life decisions, asking how old you were when you made some of those big life decisions, like getting married and starting a family, buying a house, whatever order that happened in. Maybe it happened in that order. Maybe it didn't. New report says some of those things are happening much later in life now for millions of Canadians, the millennials, if they ever happen at all. And we have been asking, what does that say about the state of the Canadian dream? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I know the wait's been long. It's been busy today. Let's get to Eunice is up next. Hello, Eunice.
Hi there. How are you?
Hi, Eunice. Yeah, very good, Eunice. Thank you.
Good. So I'm a millennial. I am the population of which
You
are
are,
speaking.
all right.
So
Yes.
happy to be like the youngest caller in so far. I'm 35.
So far, yeah.
I bought my first place, currently living there at 30. I got married at 32 and started a family at 33. So I'm currently 35. So yeah, a lot has happened in the last few years. Definitely
busy.
think that
busy 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think definitely it's twofold. Like it cannot, like the housing is, like prices are definitely insane. It can't be explained away by inflation or by people just suddenly spending more and being more consumeristic. I think older generations have also. But so that's definitely a factor, but I do believe for sure there is overconsumption as well. So it is a lot harder to achieve that quote unquote Canadian dream. It takes a lot of intentionality and then also help as well.
It takes help?
Yeah.
Did you have help?
Not to buy my house actually, but I think so I didn't come from generational wealth. My parents immigrated here from overseas, but they worked hard. Right. They bought their house at, when houses were more affordable, like in the earlier 90s. And so they provided a stable place for me growing up, and they were able to pay for my university. That being said, I've never earned even the average amount. I've always had maybe half what the average amount of earners in Calgary make in a year. But that being said, I've also been very frugal. And I would also be remiss to say that, without saying that, as a person of faith, I've always prioritized giving, not preaching prosperity gospel or anything, but I do believe there's like the hand of God in that for sure, because it's just so countercultural. So I do believe I'm definitely an exception. But yeah, it's definitely hard out there. Yeah, for sure.
So among your peers, are you the exception in that you're married with children with a house, would you say, among your peers?
No, I wouldn't.
No? Okay.
There's definitely a mix, but quite a few of us have homes. Of course, those homes are not single-family homes necessarily. They're condos or townhouses. I'm in a half duplex.
Sure.
So I think it's like, I think the Canadian dream kind of has to shift a bit. It's like we don't need a huge house. We can make do with, with less.
Right.
And I think that's not necessarily an unhealthy thing.
Eunice, let me ask you, did it ever seem as though it was impossible? And it's just never going to happen?
Right. I don't think so. But also, I'm a weird one, and I started saving for a house when I was 16. So, but I know for my peers, yes, for sure. So I can speak for myself. No, it didn't seem impossible, but it was definitely like, oh my gosh, this is almost insurmountable. So I had to buy a house. So I bought a house with my sister. I wasn't married. There was no way I was going to be able to buy a house with my single income. So yeah, being creative, joining forces with, people that I could.
Very good. And good for you. Well, thank you for waiting. Then thank you for calling, and all the best to you, Eunice. Up first here in hour number 2 to Bedford, Nova Scotia. Chad is up next. Hello, Chad. Oh, Chad. Manuel then. Okay, Manuel. Hi, Manuel.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Manuel. Yeah, good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear from you too.
Yeah, so tell us your story, Manuel.
Yeah, okay. So I just graduated high school here in Calgary, and I just thought I would offer a different perspective, because I feel like most of the people on here are like boomers, or they're on the older side. So anyways, I just feel like it's...
So how old are you, Manuel? If you just graduated from high school, how old are you?
So I'm 18 right now. Just turned recently.
18. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And right now I'm planning to go to university, mostly because I feel like the job market is looking really bad right now. It's been really hard to get a job. I've been looking a lot to get a job, maybe a summer job, really anything. And I know a lot of people my age who have been doing this as well. And it's just been very difficult. Like I know very few people who've actually managed to find a job for the summer, right? So that's one thing that I wanted to say. Just that it's looking very, very it's just
bleak.
Looking very, very difficult to even like attempt to sustain yourself, and so that's part of the reason. Okay, well, I should say I'm not very hopeful about the future for like people in my generation, at least, because it feels so difficult to like get a job, to start raising money. Everything's so expensive. There's constantly like high inflation, and the other biggest thing is how expensive housing is. Like we have a problem here where housing is just treated as like an investment, and the housing can't go down. So the government does everything they can to just prop it up, and it just makes it extremely expensive for those of us who are just getting into the market now. Right, we're just turning 18. We're just starting to explore the idea, and it's it's looking very, very difficult. Like housing compared to wages is at an all-time high, and it doesn't seem to ever like be going down.
Right. So the idea of, say, buying a house, getting married, having children. I mean, you're only 18. Lots of time yet, Manuel. Lots of time yet. But you would say that's what? Just not in the cards for you. Like, do you think you could do that in 10 years from now?
I don't think I will be able to do it in 10 years.
You don't
right?
think so?
That's something that I want. I do want to.
Do you think you'll ever be able to do it? You think you'll ever be able to do it?
Will I ever? I do think so.
Yeah.
I think I'll be able to.
Okay. I hope so too, Manuel. Thank you for your call. And just like that, we're underway. Hour number 2 of Talkback. 1-833-668-2577. I think we have 3 lines available there. We're ready to grab one, maybe even 4. If you'd like to join the discussion and contribute your thoughts, we'd love to hear from you on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Big life decisions, our topic of the day. It's been very, very busy today on Talkback here on this Wednesday. Asking questions like, how old were you when you got married? How old were you when you started a family? How old were you when you bought a house? And given that some of those things are happening much, much later in life now for younger generations, if they ever happen at all, what does that say about the Canadian dream? The Canadian dream, especially home ownership. Home ownership widely viewed as being part of the Canadian dream, as a part of achieving something. You've made it, Congratulations, you're all grown up. Let's go to Mintz in Halifax. Mintz, is that right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, welcome back to the land of the living. I'm just getting over my experience with Jenny Craig. It's these illnesses are getting more and more personal as we get older. So it's good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
I'm coming from a slightly different angle, and one slightly academic as well as personal, but I think post-45, 1945, the end of the war, family was brutally important. And the whole nuclear family, we're protecting ourselves, we're getting close again, lost too many people in the war. And I think this was a Western civilization phenomenon, not just Canadian. And then it became a habitual sort of rite of passage that this is just what you do. I don't know if it was necessarily a dream. I know that my parents, when they got together, bought a house in West Vancouver. My mom paid $17,000, $1 down, literally $1 down for a home in West Vancouver, which, of course, as I grew up, I considered it the Riviera of the Pacific Northwest. My dad started out as a garbage truck driver there. My mom had to do a bit of working. He worked 2 jobs and went to PVI school at night just to make things work. And he worked his ass off, ended up as municipal manager. The house that was $17,000 when they decided they'd had enough of each other, was about $250,000. That was in 1990, and now it'd be over $2 million now, no question. When it was initially purchased was 800 square feet. Dad added on 400 square feet, so $2 million for 1,200 square feet. Kids can't afford that. There's just no way. And so that's one aspect of the argument, but I don't know that whole rhythm and pattern was necessarily a dream. It was a conformist pattern that this is just what you're expected to do. I was expected to go to university. I was expected to, at some point, get married, have kids, have a job, and be an upstanding human being. And
how did you do?
That's the critical question. I had great paying jobs when I was in my 20s and even in my late teens. Don't know that I saved a ton. My 20s were definitely my learning curve years. And I finally grew up in my early 30s, met a woman that I thought was in keeping with what I was expected to do, realized that I'm really not a conformist, and that didn't work out, but bought my first home in my 30s, and that whole rhythm, that whole pattern was carrying on. I was doing what my parents expected me to do. And now I'm thinking we're seeing 2 things happening. Obviously, an cost of living, specifically homes, that don't support that rhythm and pattern. I don't want to necessarily call it a dream. I think if there's a Canadian dream, it's about being able to do what you want in a free and safe society that's going to actually support you, and apologize for it at the same time. But we're not seeing that happen as much anymore. And so the kids now they're swimming uphill, but we're also seeing a different kind of human in the last generation. They're thinking differently. They have a different ethic, a different politic. They have a different concentration. They're more easily distracted. And so, anyway, I'll shut up now. But yeah, it's a different human.
Okay, very interesting. Different, maybe, social norms. Or different expectations of what they want out of life, something like that?
Yep.
Vince?
And not the work ethic.
All right. It's not the same work ethic. Okay, well, that's out there for public discussion. And so is the phone line for you on Talkback today. I think we have 4 now. It was very busy. Call volume has dropped off slightly, so give us a call. We won't be too long. And have your say on those big life decisions. Why they're being delayed. Life stretching. That's what StatScan calls it. Life is being stretched now. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
There are all kinds of interesting nuggets in this report from StatScan on home ownership for millennials. Compares, millennials were here in 2021. How are they doing with owning homes, forming families compared to, say, the Gen Xers when they were the same age in 2006? And how are they doing compared to the baby boomers were doing in 1991? And there does seem to be some kind of correlation between home ownership and starting a family. It says the home ownership rate among those who are in common law relationships or marriage has actually remained relatively stable or even increased across the 3 generations. This is true of couples with or without children. Indeed, the rate of home ownership among those who are married with children is nearly identical. Between the baby boomers of 1991 and the millennials of 2021, the big difference is that fewer people are getting married. The rate of marriage has declined rapidly. For example, in 1991, 58% of baby boomers between the ages of 25 and 39 were married. So, rounded up, call it 60%. By the year 2006, for Gen Xers, that had dropped from almost 60% down to about 45%. And then it dropped another 10 points by the year 2021 for the millennials. And between the ages of 25 and 39 for the millennials, only about a third of them were married, 35%. But if they were married, the home ownership rate was about the same. 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Ernie in Kitchener. Hi, Ernie.
Hey, Rob. You there?
Yeah. Hi, Ernie. Yeah, I'm right here, Ernie.
Hey,
yeah, good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you, too. First off, go Rangers. So, Rob, I'm 40.
Yes.
I'm 41. We bought our first home at 25. And I remember about a year before we got married, my wife and I both finished school. I got a decent paying job. I made $80,000. She made about 40 at that time. I went to the bank, wanted to buy a house. What do we have to do? And I had a lot of student loan debt, about $25,000. And I basically got like the terrible bad news. Like it almost seemed impossible. So I switched and I went to a mortgage broker, and he just said, you have to do this, this, and this, and I'll get you a house. So what we did, we didn't own our home. We were renting. We got roommates to offset the rent, to save up, paid the debt down. And then we bought it. We were able to purchase our first home for $380,000 and in Kitchener. And we paid, I think it was $25,000 or $30,000 down was our down payment. Now, what we did at that time as well, we bought a duplex on purpose to offset our mortgage, to save up to purchase our next home, because we were like, this isn't going to be our forever house. Let's think ahead. That's what we did.
Maybe your for now house. Right. Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So and have somebody offset it like the roommates did at the rental. So we got lucky enough that I was able to actually keep that duplex and get our next place without selling that, which at first I thought I had to do. Now, am I saying it's because I didn't order Uber Eats and I didn't do all this and that's why I was able to do it? No, the numbers were right at the time, and we weren't making crazy money at that time either.
Okay, they're going to cut us off, Ernie. If you want to hang on the line, I'll bring you back.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
All right, Ernie, let's pick up where we left off. Thank you for being patient there. Appreciate the call.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Basically, what I'm trying to say here, too, is when I was 25, that down payment, $30,000, got me my first home. Okay, now, with even renting that home that we have now, I have 3 professionals in the upper unit, and these are young, I call them kids. They're not young kids. They're like 28, 27, and roughly that same age. They have good jobs, making about $100,000 a year. They are renting from me at that age now because they cannot. Now that down payment you need to buy even a starter home is way more. So and I'm not talking about they are professional professionals. When I would say they probably make about $100,000 a year or very short of, and they are renting from me now. And I just look at the tides were turned, Rob. I don't know what it would take for me if we were able to do the same thing again. And it's not because these guys are, like I said, it's not because they're wasting and spending their money. They, from what I've seen, what I know, it's just that it's almost impossible without a big chunk of change or help from mom and dad to get you started, Rob.
Right. And so you didn't have that kind of help, but you still managed to do it, right?
We managed to do it, yeah. And
but if you had to do it all over again and had to start now, you don't think you would be able to do it?
Rob, you would have to have somewhere where your rent would be super cheap, that you would be able to save to get that. initial down payment in. And in my area, that would be extremely difficult to do if I was not living with mom and dad. And that just goes to the point, too, where I see why people aren't necessarily getting married as quick. And also, to the kids, when you can barely afford your rent or where you're living now, and do you want to, like, you already feel the oppression. I don't want to say oppression, but when you feel like you can barely afford to live and you want to bring a new child into this world, there's a lot of parents are thinking, we want to have kids, but what are we going to do? Afford to live or to pay rent and to pay for our mortgage? Or are we going to have a child? And that to me is just sad because it's already changed in that 15 years drastically. And whereas before I want to talk to a lot of the boomers where you could have a decent paying job and you didn't need to have education, you could go and buy a home. So that's just a bit of my argument, but thanks for the time, Rob.
Well, thank you, Ernie and Kitchener. We have every single phone line available right now, so the wait won't be too long. 1-833-668-2577. We were starting with some pretty basic questions. How old were you when you got married? How old were you when you started a family? How old were you when you bought a house? Again, whatever order that happened in, sometimes it happens in the completely reverse order. And we've been citing this report that came out from StatsCan within the last week or so about millennials and where they stand according to the 2021 census is so very clear. Not shocking to read it, but just how much later in life it's happening now for millions of Canadians, if it ever happens at all. And we've been asking, well, what does that say about the Canadian dream? What does that say about the Canadian dream? What does it say at all? Columnist with the Globe and Mail, John Turley-Ewers, says it indicates a K-shaped economy. That's come up in the last couple of weeks, a couple of times from some callers who say, I think what we have right now in Canada is a K-shaped economy. Think of the letter K, you get the straight line down, and then you've got one line going up, one line going down. He argues that right now, the line that's going up in the K is the 45 plus cohort. They're the top arm of the K. They are the haves. Now, if you're over 45, you're probably a have because you probably have a house. You might have an investment portfolio, some money in the bank. But that if you're under 45, and the oldest millennials are 45 now, too bad, so sad. You're on the bottom arm of the K. You're not the have not, but you're the have less, he says. And if you're under 35, you have much less. And you're very much the bottom rung of that K. And he points to this report of those 35 and under and what they're facing. And he notes, back in 1991, we had 33% of people between the ages of 25 and 39 living in Ottawa, living in Toronto. They could own a detached home. Okay? Kind of place you can raise a family with. I mentioned this earlier in the program. In Vancouver, in 1991, imagine Vancouver and how expensive Vancouver is. And yet still, in 1991, if you're under 35, 36% chance you had a single family home. And it probably only costs 3.5 times your household income. And now everything has flipped. And he says Canadians under 35 are enduring basically their version of the Great Depression. That they're the only cohort in the country to experience a decline in real income between the years 2020 and 2025. Their incomes have fallen behind inflation, whereas those of all other age groups have exceeded the rate of inflation over time. And it mirrors the falling employment rate for Canadians under the age of 35, whereas the employment rate has actually decreased compared to most other cohorts. 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. Big life decisions. For many, life decisions that are increasingly on hold. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
I've been asking, how old were you when you got married, started a family, or bought a house? And given that some of those things are happening much later in life now, for younger Canadians, what does that say about the state of the Canadian dream? It's interesting to hear from some of the older callers, 20, 21 years old, 21, 22, some later in life, but really no older than, say, early 30s, getting married, starting a family, having a house. I was thinking about my own parents today. By the time they were in there, I would say 25, 26 years old. Father was working in public administration. Mother was a nurse. They had 2 kids, a house, a car, and a dog. By the time they were, as I say, 25, 26 years old. Mind you, early 70s. Now it's the year 2026. What do the prospects look like now for people who are 25, 26, of having 2 children, a house, a car, and a dog? Derek in Okotoks. Hi, Derek.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going. Yeah, Derek, thank you. Yeah. What would you say, Derek?
So I purchased my first home when I was 25 years old. I am now
25.
31.
Okay.
I sold that house just 2 years ago and got into a little bit of a bigger home. I got married at 30 and having my first kid this year.
Congratulations.
I would say it. Thank you. And when I purchased my first home when I was 25, it was in COVID and prices were low at that point. It was 2021. And I got my single family detached home for $350,000. Sold it after being in it for 4 years for $550,000, which gave me the down payment I needed to get on my acreage. It is incredibly hard for young people to get in now, and a lot of my friends are not in homes because the barrier to entry and the cost of homes have got so high. But not just that, the expectation of a lot of these younger home buyers, they want everything all new. They want the granite countertops. They want things nice. And they're thinking, why would I bother spend all this money on a mortgage when I can rent for cheaper and have the nice new things, not have to worry about a lot of this stuff. I wouldn't have been able to buy my house if it wasn't for my parents. However, they did not give me any money. But at a very young age, they were like, you got to put money into RRSPs. They made sure that I didn't have any credit card debt. They were monitoring my credit cards. They gave me one at like 14 just for gas and little things, and they watched it before I got one of my own. But it was mostly them just saying you need to put money into RSPs. When you go to buy your first home, you can cash those out early. You have to repay them. And just giving me a little bit of financial literacy. So if you don't have parents telling you that, getting you started very young, then when it does come to getting a down payment, even if it's just 5%, it becomes a very hard thing to achieve.
Right. Right. And do you think this knowledge is lacking for most of your peers?
Oh, definitely. Well, not at this point, but when they were younger, they didn't have the RRSPs. And it's funny because I think of this person I worked with before, and she bought her home at 21 and very financially literate, and she was part of the Mormon church. And she said that they had classes on teaching about finances, how to save, how to invest. And I just thought that was so smart of the church to do, especially when they get a little kickback.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. With the tithing and whatnot. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. It sounds like you've done really well. Best of luck with your parenthood adventure. Derek, thank you so much. Yeah, 1-833-668-2577. I mean, there is, in some circles of the media this week, I mean, there are genuine expressions of anger that it is this way for some young people. I was mentioning this article in the Globe, who was the columnist is outlining this scenario for interns who want to get into the financial services industry in a expensive city like Toronto. And the Toronto and the financial district is filled with fresh faces now, hoping to make it big in the banking sector. 23 and 24-year-olds, and he says, when they start their careers, they're going to make $65,000 on Bay Street. They'll be lucky if they take home about $4,200 a month. In one of the most expensive cities in the country, where renting a small 1-bedroom apartment is going to take up 70% of their take-home pay. And if they pick up a side hustle, imagine you're working in the financial district of Toronto. Whatever taxes they pay are going to basically double, and they'll be doing more labor for less money. And eventually, if they work, say, 5 to 7 years in the banking sector, they might get a promotion. They might make $100,000 a year. They might add $2,000 a month to their take-home pay, meaning they're going to pay half of their income in tax. If they do eventually find love, partner up, marry somebody with the same salary, then that new couple gets to try and buy a house that's going to cost them between 7 to 8 times their combined household income. That is going to vanish into what he calls the void of fixed costs, most of it going to pay mortgage interest for a decade, leaving little cash flow to support retirement investments, let alone save for a rainy day. It's not a lack of ambition, he says. It is a reflection of ours. A lament for a young Canadian's bleak future. We should be angry at the situation that younger generations are finding themselves in. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, just as an aside, maybe we will talk about this tomorrow on Talkback. We'll see what the day brings then. But the National Post's Ottawa Bureau is reporting that Alberta and the Carney government are now setting a fall date for when Prime Minister Carney's cabinet is going to designate a pipeline to British Columbia as being in the national interest. That building a new 1 million barrel a day pipeline from Alberta to the West Coast is at the heart of the memorandum of understanding that the Carney government has been, of course, looking to negotiate and finalize with Alberta since November of last year. They're very close to reaching an agreement on the industrial carbon tax. But now we are learning, we expect more on Friday, that the pipeline proposal would receive a designation as being deemed in the national interest sometime this fall. Well, we'll see what tomorrow brings on that. That'll be interesting. Steve is in Guelph. Thank you for waiting, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for the call. Anyway, so I agree. There's a lot of this expensive stuff going on, and the kids in the next generations or so are going to have trouble getting their places. But I just want to throw in a little twist on this whole thing, is that, buying houses, real estate agents, I think, have a huge influence on price. They crank it up a little bit. Oh, yeah, you'll get this and this for your house. And the people see dollar signs and all this. But down the line, the next person buying it or after them, up and up it goes. I don't think house values have really gone down. Like, you wouldn't buy a house at $200 and then sell for, $150, right? So, just a little twist on it. But, the agents are in it. They're quite worthy, and they're positioning and doing their thing. And there is that, that excitement that they bring around about the price and stuff. So it's going to be high, and people like dollar signs, but the buyers don't. But that's all I was going to say, Rob.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I would just put it to you, sir. We now have large percentages of multiple generations, okay, growing frustrated and angry, feeling let down and ripped off because they feel as though, and I would say rightly so, they are not getting a fair shake and the social contract is broken. They are not getting the same opportunities to get ahead in life as their parents or their grandparents did. And I would like everyone to think about this because this is at the heart of the conversation today. Do you want millions and millions of angry young Canadians who feel ripped off because they have to put off the big life decisions for no other reason than housing is so damn expensive? Housing is about settling down. It's about being able to get married. It's about being able to put down roots and be part of a community and feel a sense of belonging somewhere. And consider what Canada is losing out when it's losing that. I'm Rob Snow. Be back with you tomorrow, brand new topic and more of your calls. And until then, the latest breaking news on News Radio.